Hi everyone, Wismeril here. Today I want to walk you through the speed farming version of the Ball Lightning build. This version is absolutely out of control. It is insane. The mobility, the resource generation you have, the damage, it has it all. The only thing it doesn't have is toughness, but you know what? It doesn't matter for speed farming, Nightmare Dungeons, Helltide and Blood Harvest. This build is completely crazy. Like I've been playing Diablo 4 since the beta, and the Sorcerer class never had something that's great. Season 2 is amazing. Not only for the Ball Lightning build, but mostly because of the new unique items that were added, and it's just the mobility is out of control. All right, what are we looking at? Well, if you're going to play this build, unlike the variant from yesterday, which was about Nightmare Dungeon Purge and Hardcore, where you didn't need a single unique, when you're going to assemble this speed farming version of the Ball Lightning, you do need a few uniques that really make a big difference. Like, you need to have them. If you don't have them, the mobility is not going to be as great, and the resource generation is not going to be as great. Best in slots items include the best unique items. I did not include all of them. Some of them are not best in slots. Some are mandatory, some are nice to have, and some are not best in slots. I will detail in the second part of the video which one is which. Alright, so what are you going to be playing if you assemble this build? Well, you're gonna be playing a Rogerer or a Sorg. Basically, you're playing a Sorcerer because you're, firing Sorcerer skills, but you have the mobility of a Rogue. It is insane. You have more dashes than you can use, and you just walk at the speed of light. It's amazing. This build has it all. I'm going to regret that build when I switch to all the other builds I have on my list, like Conjuration, Dots, and da-di-da-da, But like this one, it's completely crazy. In order to level your glyphs, it's great. It's amazing. Like, you can run Nightmare Dungeon at the speed of light, as you can see me doing here. You have the damage to do virtually up to 85, 90 with this version of the build, I would say. But the limiting factor is the toughness. You see, I made room in the build for as much mobility as possible while keeping the damage where it matters, but I had to cut some toughness. So the tier of Nightmare Dungeons that you want to be speed running to level up your glyphs depend on your ability to dodge skills. If you want to play it fair and you don't want things to one-shot you and have to avoid things just like in the Matrix movie, then I recommend you run tier 60. 50 to 60 to 65, you're not going to die in those tiers. It's very comfortable. This will be perfect if you're like watching a movie or a Netflix series where you're leveling your glyphs at the same time. But if you're in for a challenge, see, I'm running 75 in this run, and everything dies very quickly. Everything is stunned before it has a chance to attack, and there's not really room for retaliation. So if you're if you're up for the challenge, you can play like me tier 75 or even 80, 85, maybe 90. You could do that. You would level up your glyph very fast because the glyph XP scales with tier difficulty of the Nightmare Dungeon. Not much, but it does. So if you can manage to avoid dying during your runs, you can really push the limit. But if you start to die, lower the tier. Dying one time in a Nightmare Dungeon run is disastrous for your clear speeds, because you will most likely respawn at the entrance of the dungeon. You will lose 1 good minute just to walk back to where you were, and guess what? One run like this is 3 minutes. So if it's just like additional 25% time if you die. You're 25% less efficient if you're going to die during your nightmare dungeon runs. So keep that in mind when you choose the correct difficulty, the correct tier for your speed runs. So this is only applicable for nightmare dungeons, because here you see they are level 129 because of tier 75. But this very same build that I'm using for nightmare dungeon is the exact same build for HELLTIDE and Blood Harvest. You don't need to change a single thing. It does both, all three. So when it comes to HELLTIDE and Blood Harvest, toughness is not going to be an issue, because the monsters are going to be 3 levels above you, so 100 up to 103 for HELLTIDEs. For Blood Harvest, I don't remember, but I think it's the same, 103, maybe same level, I'm not exactly sure. Anyway, those are the runs. There's a little bit of lag because I recorded this morning and it was a bit laggy, so I apologize for that. Those are my HELLTIDE runs. So toughness is not an issue during HELLTIDE, and the mobility of this is absolutely bonkers, and the mana generation is completely crazy too. So you're going to be clearing those HELLTIDEs, and the damage is good. Look at that. This is a solo clear on the HELLTIDE assassin. Well, here I'm not standing on him, but when I am in the middle, like here, this is where I do the damage, and bloop, gone. So when you fight those HELLTIDE commanders, try to teleport in the middle of them, so every single ball lightning around you hits him. If you're on the right side or on the left side or top or bottom, not all of them are going to hit, but if you're exactly on top of him, every single ball lightning is gonna hit and you're going to melt him. So damage is good. Damage is pretty good, as you just saw. And mobility, man, I love that. It's crazy. Look at that. I have 1000 cinders, and this is only like half an hour run. So of course I'm not picking up items. So if you're picking up items and just looking at them, seeing which one's best for your build, blah blah blah, you're not going to have as many cinders as I do. But if you're efficient in what you do, or if you're already geared like Endgame, you can definitely collect more than 3000 cinders in a single run. Why does that matter? Because during HELLTIDE, you can open up to 4 chests, the steel chests, that is, except when the HELLTIDE is in Kyrgyzstan. When it's in Kyrgyzstan, you can open up to 6 of those chests that each cost 300 cinders. So 300 times 6, that's 1800 cinders. So if you farm like around 2000 cinders in an hour and you're organized enough, you can open up to 6 chests. Now, the stars would have to align for all those 6 chests to be present on a Kyrgyzstan run, but that's the maximum you could do. And on top of that, you could open up to 4 mystery chests, 250 cinders each. So if you're able to farm 2800 cinders per hour, then you will be very efficient with what you loot. But anyway, you don't need to, it doesn't need to come to that extent. All I'm trying to highlight is if you want to be up to those 2,000 to 3,000 cinders, you can with that build. It's crazy good. It's crazy good. Okay. For Blood Harvest, it's basically the same than for HELLTIDEs, except I don't remember which level your opponents, the monsters, are gonna be, but it's basically the same. You just run around, kill everything, pick up things, and try to do some whispers at the same time than you're doing your Blood Harvest or your HELLTIDE, and you're pretty good to go. I think that's about it for the gameplay introduction. Now let's jump into what makes this build special, which uniques am I using, what's different from yesterday, the build that was about hardcore version or nightmare dungeon push. Let's just see that in the second part of the video. Alright, let's see the build in details. Let's talk first about the uniques I have included and the one I did not include because they are not best in slot. First and foremost, the Oculus. This stuff, this wand, is absolutely crazy in combination, I'm pretty sure you know it, with Metamorphosis. I've been waiting to make this video after patch 1.2.1 hits live, because I wanted to make sure that they were not going to nerf that interaction, because there was something about that in the patch notes. Anyway, it was not nerfed, it still works wonder. The Oculus is going to give you for free the teleport enchantment, but it's going to take you to a random location, which is overwritten by Metamorphosis, because this enchantment is not more teleport, it gets back to be evade, which means you cannot evade from the top of a cliff to the bottom. This is not the teleport enchantment anymore. Therefore, you are not taken to a random place. Combination of those two is super good. That's what makes you feel like you're playing rogue when you're playing a sorcerer actually. So this one is definitely to be included. It is best in slot, having max evade charges, reducing their cooldown by 1.2 seconds here and 1.2 seconds there, because on your boots you want the same prefix, and combining it with Metamorphosis is just absolutely insane in terms of mobility. Note that evading will make you unstoppable for 4 seconds. We're gonna use that later on. So this one's mandatory. You want to have that for that build. You could get away without it, it's not going to be as efficient. The second one that's best in slot and that you do want to get, there's nothing better than that, would be Tybalt's Will. So that one says, when you become unstoppable, you gain 50 mana, and this is great. This, in combination with the Prodigy's legendary that we were running in the build yesterday, makes it so that every time you press a button, if it doesn't make you unstoppable, that's 25 mana. If it makes you unstoppable, that's 50 plus 25 mana plus multiplied, by your mana generation. That usually is around 1.4, let's say on average. So that's 75 times 1.4. So every time you press a button that makes you unstoppable, you just generate 105 mana. This is very good. This is one of the ways that we're generating more mana that we can use, and we're just dashing all over the place and not really caring about our mana. So this one is great. I mentioned that the evade Metamorphosis will make you unstoppable. Therefore, this one is going to generate the 50 mana plus. I'm not sure this one works with evade. I think it does, because I do generate a lot of mana. Anyway, so that's one way to generate mana, and this unique is best in slot. You definitely want it. You don't want it so much for the multiplier. It's nice to have it maxed out. You need it for the mana. Next, we are running the Raiment of the Infinite. This chest armor is best in slot. Let's say it's nice to have. Those two, I would say, are mandatory. This one, if you don't have it, it's not that bad, but it helps a lot, okay? So you can just equip the same defensive chest armor from yesterday's video, but if you do have that, it's going to help a lot, because Ball Lightning is a melee skill, so obviously grouping up enemies before instantaneously bursting them is really key to speed farm at the speed of light. So this one, you do want to have that, but it's not mandatory. Same for the Godslayer crown. This one is nice to have, but you can get away without having it. I would say it's the least maybe desirable of all 4 uniques. But this one, I like it very much, because we are running a Lightning Spear, and when Lightning Spear stuns an elite enemy, it's going to group up everything, like the elite plus everything that was surrounding it, in the same way that Raiment of the Infinite is doing that. It's just that your teleport has a cooldown, so sometimes it's not up all the time. Let's say you're teleporting in the middle of trash mobs and you're grouping them and killing them, you can't teleport right away. You'd have to wait maybe 1, 2, 3 maximum seconds before you can do that. And if there happens to be an elite around and your last Lightning Spear is roaming around, Lightning Spear is going to make a second pack of enemies on which you just have to evade, dash onto them to blow them up. This is very convenient. Those two really make you kill enemies faster. So those two, you do want to get them. They are not mandatory, but it certainly helps. So I would say you do need those 4 to be set. The flicker step is not best in slot. It's not best in slot because we don't need unstable currents so much. You don't need it to kill elites, even in the runs that you saw me doing with Nightmare Dungeons tier 75. You don't need that to kill them. You only need it for the boss, for the Helltide commander, or sometimes when a room is filled with 6 to 9 elites, let's say 6 elites, okay, you're going to pop that. Or if there are elites and also some trash mobs that have the aura that gives extra resistance to everything around it, yes, you do want to pop unstable currents. Other than those situations, you don't want that. And don't worry, we are running the 20% cooldown reduction as a vampiric power. And in this build, which is about speed farming, we do need to be running overflowing energy, which is going to reduce the cooldown of unstable current. So don't worry, it's going to be up when you need it. Just make sure to not fire it when you're reaching the end of a dungeon. Keep it for the boss and you're good to go. So you don't need to further reduce the cooldown by up to 4 seconds by up to 10 seconds every time you evade through 3 enemies. So this one is not best in slot. Why is it not best in slot? Other than the reason I just gave you, because this legendary power is a lot better. The Bounding Conduit, which says you gain 30% movement speed for 3 seconds after teleporting. This one is big. Your movement speed is around 150% if you have a movement speed roll on your boots and 1 movement speed roll on your amulet. And by running this one, you're going to add 30%. The maximum is 200. So with this one, when you press teleport, that's 180%. It doesn't work with evade because remember, evade is not a teleport anymore. But the uptime of this is very, very good because teleport, its cooldown is lowered because of all the points you have. Here you see plus 10 ranks of teleport, could be up to 15, so that reduces a lot the cooldown of teleport. And where the main reason I would say why we're running overflowing energy is primarily to reduce the cooldown of teleports, because we want to have this, we want to have uptime on the Bounding Conduit as much as we can. Okay, that's so far that's 100. I will tell you how we make it 200. That's 180%, and this is why we are running the overflowing energy, which, by the way, is very synergistic with mystical teleport, because running this and that, every crackling energy is going to hit 5 enemies, and it's going to reduce the cooldown of this. That makes crackling energy pulse faster. So it's very synergistic. But anyway, main reason for this is 1, teleport, 2, lightning spear because of the Godslayer crown. That's going to pack enemies for you very often, on top of giving you 25 mana times 1.4 because of the Prodigy's legendary. And that's why we want to be running that. Okay, so Bounding Conduit gives 30%. On top of that, on the amulet, we do want to get a mobility legendary, and we want the Ghost Walker one. It says, while unstoppable and for 4 seconds after, you gain up to 38% increased movement speed, and more importantly, you can move freely through enemies. Moving freely through enemies is helping a lot. In Nightmare Dungeons, where there are corridors, you don't get body blocked by enemies. This is really nice. And on top of that, remember, when you use teleport, you become unstoppable for like less than a second. It breaks CC, but you're unstoppable. So that's 30% plus up to 38%, plus up to 52% from those 2 roll, which means when you press teleport, you're going to be capped at 200% movement speed, and the uptime of teleport is very high. So that's why this one is a lot better than Flicker Step, because having 50% more movement speed really, really matters in speed farming scenarios, right? So those 2 works wonder. By the way, you remember, we are unstoppable after we use evade, unstoppable for 4 seconds. Evade is not teleport, so you don't benefit from this one, but you do benefit from that one. So let's say your 152% movement speed plus 38, that's 190, if I'm correct. Yes. So every time you evade, if this is maxed out and your movement speed are maxed out on the boots and amulets, by just evading, you'll be running at 190 for 4 seconds. No, for 8 seconds, because you are unstoppable for 4 seconds, and 4 seconds after that, you still have the movement speed. So that's 8 seconds of 100 up to 190% movement speed. So those two are great. That we do want mobility on those two, mandatory. So 4 uniques, 2 mobility skills, and now what are we left with? 4 offense / 2 mana legendaries. What are we gonna do with those? Let's look at the mana ones. We're still running the Prodigy, same than yesterday. It's pretty good. I told you in combination with T-Bolts, that's 100 mana most of the time that you refill, pretty good. And anyway, this is because you don't want to be running around all the time to collect crackling energy. By just pressing your buttons, you're going to refill your mana. And if there happens to be crackling energy under your feet, you're going to regenerate mana. So that we're lazy, we just want to speed run as fast as possible. Now the second one might surprise you. We are running Chain Lightning as our second enchantment. I tried many different things, many combinations for this speed farming build. The best one by far is to run Chain Lightning enchantment. But why are we doing that? Well, every time we spend 100 mana, which is 3 casts of Ball Lightning, we get a free Chain Lightning that shoots an enemy automatically, right? And we are running the recharging legendary. I'm using the base version from the codex. You don't need the 3 mana. 3 mana would be even better, but 1.5 works perfectly fine on endgame character like this one I have. So every 3 casts of Ball Lightning, you generate, let's say it's 3 mana, we'll make it better for calculations. 5 times 3, that's 15. 15 times 1.4, that's 21. So you generate 20 mana every 3 casts of Ball Lightning. It really helps also on the mana management front. And on top of that, one of our 2 remaining offensive legendaries will be the Unbroken Tether. 40% chance for Chain Lightning to chain 4 additional times. So let's say we have, let's take this 9 times 3 times 1.4, so that's 38 divided by 2, that's 19. You get between 19 if it's the minimum value like this one, up to 38 mana if you're lucky, every 3 casts of Ball Lightning. So see it as resource generation. That's the reason why I included those 2. They are amazing in this build alongside this Chain Lightning enchantment, which also happen to be generating crackling energy. And guess what? Crackling energy gives you mana. So really, this build is super comfortable. Like, you will not lack mana at all. By just, pressing your buttons, doing your things, you will generate more mana than you need. You will have enough mana to cast Ball Lightning. And trust me, it's not about casting a million Ball Lightning. The difficulty in this build is pressing all your buttons, because the cooldowns come back quite often. So you have like more evades than you need. The cooldown on teleport will reset very often. You will have this available most of the time. Same for Lightning Spear, comes back very often. So the real challenge is not really to cast a million Ball Lightning. It's to cast all your spells in between your Ball Lightning while still moving and kiting enemies forward. That's the real challenge. Mana, not a problem. Movement speed, 200%. Dashes, more than you can use. Dash like there's no tomorrow. And for the defense, you rely on Ice Armor, Flame Shield at critical moments, and stunning ranged enemies with lightning spears. That's how it works. Not challenging it Helltide and Blood Harvest. Nightmare Dungeon, scale the difficulty up to your skills to press all your buttons fast enough while still managing to cast enough ball lightning to zap everything around you. This is how the build works. It is insane. In terms of, and of course we are running the gravitational mandatory legendary for ball lightning to orbit around us and follow us. The affixes on items are the same. Well, those are unique, so you don't need to worry. The affixes there are the same. The affixes here are the same than yesterday. The only difference will be your boots. I do have 2 pairs of boots. One like the one from yesterday for single target damage. One like that, where I like to have the movement speed and mana cost very high, and I don't care very much about the 2 other affixes. What matters is high movement speed and high mana cost reduction. Amulet, same. I want high movement speed and high mana cost reduction, and I don't care about the rest. And I'm going to imprint my best Ghost Walker onto it. And I do have the one from yesterday for maximum toughness, and I do have the one that I'm going to introduce in tomorrow's video for Lilith, Uber kills and all that stuff, like the damaging one, let's say. So I do have 3 amulets, 2 pairs of boots. If you can afford to do the same, that'd be great. I have 3 rings, because the last one is the one from yesterday, the offensive one that would go in the place of the chain lightning one. And then if I don't run those legendaries, I have the replacement there, and maybe I'm going to use Flicker Step one day. So that's the build in terms of legendary powers. Let's look at the vampiric powers. So we already covered that one. So those 2 are same than yesterday, because this one's busted and this one's pretty nice for vulnerable and all the synergies that comes with it. Cooldown reduction, we do need that. And the last one, it might surprise you, but I really like the Accursed Touch one, because first, it makes things vulnerable without, it applies Vampiric Curse on things without you having to dash through enemies. Keep your dash for mobility to go wherever you please, and don't worry if an enemy resists, like it's not dying in just 1 second, it's gonna be vulnerable and it's going to die in 2 seconds. That's for elites, bosses, and the alike, okay? So that's the reason, the first reason I would say why I run that. The second reason is when you're running Helltides and Blood Harvest, surprisingly, the Vampiric Curse stored souls deal enough damage to clear things, but only during Blood Harvest and Helltides, where enemies are more or less same level than you. If you're running Nightmare Dungeon tier 75, the damage is subpar. But this one is great, because you're bouncing all over the place, grouping enemies and killing them, and guess what? Those ranged enemies here and there, when you're going to press Teleport, Ice Armor or Flame Shield, you're going to release 8 stored souls that are going to benefit from this 200% increased damage, and they do kill things when they are same level than you. So they are going to kill those ranged enemies here and there that you don't want to bother to walk to, right? It's gonna kill them for you. So this, in my opinion, is the best setup. Those 2 best powers of the season, for that build. Build Enabler, this one is great for speed farming scenario. And that one, it's I think it's mandatory you run this one. If you're running hardcore, maybe you want Undying, or which one is that? Resilience, one of those 2, maybe if you're running hardcore. Otherwise, Anticipation works wonder. Alright, so that's for the vampiric powers. Skill tree. Skill tree, not much changed from yesterday. In a pushing scenario, we are running Veer's Mastery or Hardcore. In a speed farming scenario, you want to be running Overflowing Energy. That 1 point over here was taken from Mystical Ice Armor, because you don't really need the extra toughness on vulnerable. Things are going to die before they even turn vulnerable. So this point over here goes over there for more uptime on teleports, Lightning Spear, and Unstable Current. Everything here is the same, nothing changed. everything here is the same except for that point. Yes, and the second difference will be over here. We used to have 3 and 1 over there. We're keeping only 1 here, and we want Chain Lightning as our enchantment. It's gonna bounce up to 9 times, so great for the chance to crit and to produce crackling energy, all turning into mana sustain. Let's look at the Paragon board. Paragon board is the same than yesterday. I'm using the hardcore Paragon board because we don't have that much toughness compared to yesterday's build, so I'm not running the softcore. The difference is very, very small. It's just that you have a higher HP pool, like I have 13,000 life, while I had 10,000 yesterday running the softcore version. So that's the only difference really. You do have more HP, maximum health. You do have a little bit more all resist. I did cut some plus 5% additive damage here and there, maybe a plus 8 here and somewhere else. This plus 5, and I added those maximum life nodes. That's all. Otherwise, it's exactly the same than yesterday. You're still scaling this multiplier to 26. We're still running a very efficient configuration for glyphs and boards. We're still reaching table number 5 in terms. Well, this is more because something is giving me max some stats. Which one is that? I don't remember, but oh, this one, all stats. If I wasn't running this, would be exactly at the bonus requirement 524, something like that, dexterity, and would be 434 willpower over here. So that we do have the bonus from everything except the 6th board, where we don't care so much about lightning resistance and damage to stun enemies. So it's the same than yesterday. And that's it. I hope I didn't forget anything. Yes, I think we talked about everything. Yeah, defenses. Maybe let's talk a little bit. So to include all of that, I did have to cut some damage and I did have to cut some toughness. Damage, you don't care. The build's busted. You have more damage than you can use. Toughness is a limiting factor when it comes to Nightmare Dungeon glyph leveling, speed leveling, that is. So you can see that we're still doing a good job at reaching high values for resistance, but the armor is quite low and the damage reduction is quite low too, because we are not running defensive legendaries and defensive affixes in the chest armor and pants and amulets. So you are a lot more squishy than yesterday's build, but you can get away with it. It's perfectly fine. If you're playing hardcore, maybe you want to play it safe, and you could consider including the Flame Shield Legendary, and maybe you could get rid of those two and have more defensive values when it comes to those prime damage mitigation items, such as this one, very well rolled armor, chest armor with high armor, damage reduction everywhere, and the disobedience. And if you get rid of that, you might want to have more armor thanks to the Snow Veiled one and one maximum armor roll on top of that. I wouldn't get rid of that, but if you do, consider running this one that I covered yesterday, and you'll be very, very solid. I don't see you dying if you're running those 3. You could also consider that you don't need the movement speed and you prefer to have a defensive amulet if you're running hardcore. But once again, this build shines when it comes to movement speed. One last thing that now I remember I didn't cover, tips and tricks. The Thibault's Wheel said when you become unstoppable, you gain 50 of your primary resource. If you want to make the most out of this, you have to press your buttons in an order that makes you become unstoppable. Like, let me give you an example. When you use evade, you are unstoppable for 4 seconds. So if you have an empty mana bar, it refills it, but if you use it again, you're not becoming unstoppable again because it lasts 4 seconds. So the order I would recommend is teleport first because it's instant and you're not unstoppable anymore. Then Flame Shield because it only lasts 2 seconds. And then after that, Evade. Evade is the one that lasts the longest. Instant, 2 seconds, 4 seconds. So if you want to rotate your spells in order to really generate as much mana as you can with Thibault's Will, this is what you're looking to do. We are not if you're running the legendary chest armor, what is it? Helm that makes you unstoppable when you press Ice Armor, you may want to have the lowest value from the codex, 3 seconds. Because if it's the max value, 5 seconds, it's the same then with your evade. You press it and that's 5 seconds of being unstoppable, where if you do other things, it's not going to generate your 50 mana times mana generation multiplier. Okay, I think I got it right. I talked about everything I wanted to talk. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you there. Tomorrow we are going to feature the Uber Lilith version of the Ball Lightning build, the most optimized version that's going to allow you to carry 3 other players that are level 1, not geared, they don't do damage at all, they just want to loot those sweet uniques. You could have 3 in your party, being the only one that deals damage. Lilith is going to have times 4 health because of the 3 other players. Same for Duriel, but with the version of the build I'm going to share tomorrow, you're going to melt them in tens of seconds when it comes to Lilith, and in just seconds when it comes to Duriel. You want to kill Duriel before he burrows again. You want to kill Lilith, at least damage her very fast, because you don't want her to spawn those annoying missiles that one-shot you. That's why tomorrow's version is gonna be the most efficient way to build Ball Lightning when it comes to taking down those other bosses and getting that sweet fat loot. I'll see you tomorrow, guys. Have fun in Sanctuary.